Hey, cool.
Okay.
We're good.
Are you judging?
Okay. You want the key?
Huh?
Key.
Key.
Not the key.
You have it.
You want it.
Give it to Johan.
Can I have something? Yeah. You guys No.
Do we have anything after this? We need to go back to lab? No, right?
You want what?
We need to go back?
No, we have nothing to play afterwards.
And we won't have lunch, obviously.
So which side is that from?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
You guys are
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
What are you sleeping on?
I'm first,
And second,
Are you smoking?
okay, I'm
this, right? Well, they're all on YouTube?
everything's
Nice.
not for the Chinese, but well,
You guys can have a title.
they don't have YouTube.
They don't have YouTube in Pakistan, right?
It's in English when it's on YouTube. They can't watch it on Germany when they have copyright restrictions.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding.
All the impact of that.
Hmm?
Yeah, Jordan.
If it was like this. No, it was like okay.
Should we start?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's the time.
Who's Jerry?
Other weeks. Okay. First of all, I'm going to speak there. Would you like to know what
So POS after the 30th second, right?
Yeah.
And you.
Well, who will be the timer?
Yep. What kind of signals do you want? You just want the minute?
Yeah, and half a minute before I end. You ready? Opponents, Manos and okay. So what is the profile of today's gamers? They're young people who play games, are not interested in watching the news, reading articles about your country. And we believe that they take a huge part of our population. And that's why we believe this is the only way or the best way to get them interested in the nationality and the culture of your country through these kinds of game. So what we believe is that the governments will be able to hire some gamers and to actually pay them to play these games in order to promote the values of the country. Now the first argument we have is getting people interested. As I explained, we have a lot of gamers that are not interested. And this is a very feasible option. Why? Because it you must know the culture of your country in order to promote it, in order to create allies. Having allies is one of the big parts of actually succeeding in a republic or games such as that, because without allies you won't be able to actually succeed them. You won't be able to invade some other countries, you won't be able to progress in your country, and so on and so forth. So in order to become allies with people, you have to communicate to them, you have to explain what is your country, what is the values, do they match, and so on and so forth. So in order for them to be allies, we believe that they will have this communication values, communication skills that will be developed, and they will have this cultural knowledge that will be also developed. And we believe that yes, war is an option in the republic, but as in real life, it is used as a last resort. So people actually are trying to become allies before they start a war.
Sure.
Now, this is why we believe that games like e-Republic will get people interested and gamers interested, because at the end of the day, that's what gamers do all day long. Now, second point, this is how it is. We believe that this is consistent with our foreign policy practices. We invest a lot in Olympic sports. We invest a lot in general in sports. Why? Because we believe that this is another way to promote our country, to promote our culture, and to let the people know about our country. We have, for example, USA actually acknowledged playing games like League of Legends and so on and so forth, like sports, like any other sports, like NHL, and right now they're granting foreign visas for these kind of players. So the society starts to acknowledge the importance of gaming industry. Now, we believe that this would be the same as having diplomats. They work for your country, they work to promote your countries. And more, we have seen this example with e-Republic to be almost the same with subsidies. We subsidize a lot of things. For example, Turkey did a very, very good policy on subsidizing soap operas. And all around the Balkans, you can see Turkish soap operas, which actually is promoting their values and so on and so forth. Therefore,
So on that point,
yeah.
so one of the TV shows about Turkish is showing about Turkey on the Balkans is showing the court of one of the sultans half-dressed and has been banned in Turkey. How effective was that to promote foreign policy?
Well, it was pretty effective because people now actually think that Turkey is not as conservative as it used to be. So it was actually very productive for them. So because of these two reasons, because firstly we believe that this will get this part of the population interested in your country and promoting your country, we believe that these games also promote good values, they promote allies and so on and so forth. And secondly, we believe that this is consistent with the foreign policies tools we have right now, and therefore explaining the legitimacy of this policy, we strongly urge you to vote affirmative. Thank you.
Are those games based on real history?
No.
Do you create your own history in those games?
You create your own character.
Right, and you have to take, like, to have some sort of civilization, and you take over, like, you rule that civilization, right?
No, you don't rule. You're a part of civilization. It's
Okay.
not a civilization, it's a community of people.
What's the goal of those games? Like, how do you win those games, or how do you achieve points?
You don't win those games. You promote yourself as one of the best players. And to be one of the
how
best...
do you get points? How do you become a better
To
player?
be one of those best players, you have to have many allies that agree with your values. You have to have many friends on those games who agree with your values.
But you need to take over the other countries, right?
No, you don't.
Or the other players.
No, you don't. For example, Macedonia had one gamer who was in the top 15, and at the time, Macedonia was fully invaded by Greece on the game.
To, but I mean, it's an easy way, right? To get points. Like, maybe not in e-Republic, but in other
No,
games.
I would strongly be opposed this, because it's not the easiest way to get points. I mean, you can be an individual in a totally
Right, but
invaded
aren't,
country
like-
and still be in
Yeah,
the top.
but aren't in many of those games, the main goal of the game and the whole type of the game is deathmatch. That means you have to be the ones, like, standing in the at the end.
No, actually,
Oh,
I've been playing this game for 4 months, and the boundaries of the countries have stayed pretty much the same in those 4 months, which actually proves that countries are not prone to invading other countries just like that, because that can backlash you, and then the country that you've invaded will be will have not good relations with you, and they will invade you back. That's why people realize that invading countries such like that is not a good policy.
Right, but then even if not, the main goal of the debate is to be a stronger country or to be a part of a stronger civilization.
To be
than
a
the other
stronger
one,
individual in a community.
Right? Okay. Why was that soap opera you were talking about banned in Turkey? Because what?
I'm not. I don't believe it was banned in Turkey, but they did subsidize it.
There are two things that I'm going to prove to you. Number one, how their policy does not achieve anything at all. And number two, if it does, and if their policy is effective, there are more harms than benefits. So the first thing, they themselves, when contextualizing this debate, said that gamers don't care about anything. Gamers have no context of history. Gamers don't know anything about what happens in news. So when I play E-Republic, I don't know where China is, I don't know where Pakistan is, I don't know where Egypt is. So I might as well invade China, and I might think that it's some country in Europe, because I don't have any context. So what exactly are they achieving by this? Nothing at all, because gamers don't themselves know whatever is happening in the world. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, what does this promote? How does this exactly promote your national image? When an individual plays Call of Duty, how exactly is he going to know about how exactly is he going to know about the downfall of the German Nazis? He is not going to, ladies and gentlemen, because these games don't exactly provide any context. In fact, what you're promoting is people to continuously stay on the couch, not do anything and learn everything through gaming. The world that the opposition of today want to promote is children who go on and go watch the news instead of learning things through gaming. Because they themselves said that news is something that is a more effective tool of giving information. And in their word, ladies and gentlemen, news is something that people would not watch at all. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand that the only source of information for these people would be games. And trust us, we don't learn a lot of things from games when we think that in the context of things, we only do this for entertainment and not for gaining information. But if we concede that their policy is effective, let's look at whatever it's going to achieve. So, you have to understand that they're going to pay individuals to use this service, they're going to pay individuals to play games. What exactly does that mean? So if you have a tourist in your country, you will invite tourists and pay that particular tourist to visit your country. Does that happen? No, that does not happen. Because when you want to promote your culture, the other individual is someone who pays you. Because you believe that your culture is something that is above that other individual and you don't need to pay another person. And that is also true in the case of jury service. Because if you believe that this something is so important, you don't pay other individuals, ladies and gentlemen, to give them that service. And we think this is essentially flawed. But more importantly, you have to understand that if this game is also powerful, then what you're exactly promoting is countries going on and invading other countries. You're promoting an invading mentality. When the first speaker proposition said that you get allies and allies eventually conquer the world. Is this the world that the opposition of today wants to promote? No. Because if you understand that diplomacy is something that is becoming all the more important within today, is invasion something that is going to be, is invasion something, ladies and gentlemen, that you can promote side by side when you also promote diplomacy? No, you don't. Because you understand that invasion and diplomacy are two things that are polar opposites. You could either have a game, ladies and gentlemen, that would either promote diplomacy, or you could have a game, ladies and gentlemen, that promotes conquering the entire world. Sure. What does conquering the entire world essentially promote? It promotes the idea that you as citizens are in a position to overpower other countries. And is this something that we as an international community wish to promote? No, we don't. Yes, sir.
Well, do diplomacy in real life actually go in other countries and promote your economical conditions in your country?
But you have to understand that within this game, all you're doing is conquering other countries, so we don't see how that point stands. But what you find furthermore have to understand is that if China does not want this policy to exist, for example, China feels that the United States of America should not propagate its ideology to Chinese citizens, why is it sovereignty something, ladies and gentlemen, that we should take for granted? Because if China, ladies and gentlemen, does not want to promote the United States of America's image, why does China not have the right, ladies and gentlemen, to take a stand against this? Because if it feels, ladies and gentlemen, that certain ideologies are harmful for it, you already allow nation states to determine which policies affect other individuals. For example, if a certain state feels that a religion may harm that particular country, if a certain state feels that the promotion of a certain ideology harms that country's interest, then you allow countries to take that stand. And we think this is the logical extension of the entire same idea. But more importantly, you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that this is in fact, ladies and gentlemen, going to make people apathetic towards violence. Because when people see that violence is becoming something that is more common in their daily lives, and you're promoting something that essentially promotes violence, what exactly are you promoting? You're promoting an apathetic society that does not respond to violence in the way it should. And for these reasons, we urge you to vote for the opposition.
Hi. So the entire point of what we're trying to do is obviously talk to citizens of other countries. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that?
So the entire point of what we're trying to do is talk to citizens of other countries, right?
No, you're not talking to other citizens of other countries. You're saying that let's invade the entire world
No,
together.
but like, you know, when you say, for instance, that we would like be compromising China's sovereignty, it's because we're talking to Chinese citizens, right?
But it's not proper to say that Egypt, China, Libya, let's get together and conquer the entire world. This is not an ideology that we like to promote in a diplomatic world.
But like, you know, if you're paying people to go online and represent your country, what would you try to do? Would you try to tell everyone we're going to invade you, or would you try to co-opt them into alliances?
Do you want to promote an image of a country, ladies and gentlemen, that goes on and conquers the entire world with no regard for civilization or anything of that sort?
Yeah, but that would be stupid, right? When you're trying to get people on your side, you'd probably not tell everyone you're going to invade them, correct?
Alright, you don't directly go on and impose this ideology on people. You don't say that, hey, everyone should serve on the army. You leave this choice up to people. We don't see, ladies and gentlemen, how it is legitimate even to promote state religion, even if, ladies and gentlemen, the state feels that it is...
Okay, so your opinion then in a yes or no question is like you shouldn't promote your country at all to outsiders, right?
We're not saying that. We're saying that this is the wrong image of your country to promote a country, ladies and gentlemen, that does not have any regard for civilization.
So, would you, so, okay, you're missing the point. But let's go to another one. If you're Britain, right, do you have a right to promote yourself to Chinese citizens? Like, do you have the right to have like a website in Chinese that tells Chinese citizens what democracy is?
Firstly, we don't think this is the right way to go about this. If you say that Britain is someone who wants to conquer the entire world, then it shouldn't do that. Secondly,
can you just like forget about like invading the entire world, right? Like, if you're Britain, right, is it legitimate to tell people in China in Chinese that you think democracy is not good?
Not in this way.
All right, like last question: do you think that like there's any way to get people to watch the news?
Yeah.
How do you get young people to watch the news?
By promoting news channels, encouraging people to go to school or something like that.
Has that worked anywhere?
Even if that does not work, your policy does not work either because it promotes an entire image.
Yeah,
of
right,
people.
whatever. Thank you.
We'll take two.
here or? So we think the side negative completely misconstrues the nature of these online games, right? They say that in order to win these games, you need to invade other countries, you need to conquer the world, but they completely misunderstand the nature of these games. The way that you win these games is to build points by building alliances, to have a stable community, and to become a big part of the international community, which we want to do in the nation, in the international community, in the reality anyway, right? So we don't necessarily think that we're propagating violence, where people become apathetic to violence at all, because the game doesn't promote violence. These people want to win the games. They need to build alliances. They need to have social skills in order to win the games. And because these games do not propagate the values that they seem to think that they propagate, we completely reject them, reject their points. So side negative has come up and told you, first of all, that, oh, you shouldn't pay others to promote your values, right? But look in the cases of the United States of America, where they pay like a news channel called the Voice of America in order to propagate the values of the United States, right? We're not like trying to feed the ideologies like democracies down the Chinese citizens' throats. We're trying to say that we're building up a national identity. We're showing people what values that we have. Now, when we're prepping, our partners, my partner said Macedonia's national identity is getting lost, right? We don't want that to happen for every nation. In order to show that on an international stage, Macedonia actually matters, they need to make sure that everyone knows what's going on in Macedonia, what the history is. No, thank you. Second of all, they come up and say, oh, China doesn't want US's policies like being fed down their throat. We think that this is completely ridiculous, because first of all, in regular democracy, we already go there and tell the Chinese citizens what we believe in anyway. So we don't think that their problem that they're trying to propagate onto the resolution is anyway non-existent in the status quo. And then they say, oh, you know what, like diplomacy and violence are completely different things. We shouldn't like go for a world that propagates violence. But we have two problems with this. First of all, we say that diplomacy and violence aren't necessarily completely always mutually exclusive. We think that both things already exist in the status quo, so both things should be both an option for the games. And second of all, we say that diplomacy is the purpose of the games, not necessarily violence. And then they say that people become apathetic to violence, but once again, the games are not about violence. If you invade another country, obviously you're not, unless you're stupid, you know that they're going to invade you back, or you know you're going to have like unstable relationships with other countries. You don't do that. And then last of all, they say that there are other ways to educate these students. Now, really, do you really think that teenage gamers who spend 10 hours on these online games are going to go watch the news just because we don't pay them to like play these games? They haven't necessarily answered our question to cross-examination. How are you going to actually make sure that these gamers are, you know, going into the news if we don't pay them? They completely don't rebut our second contention about how it's consistent with the means of foreign policy tools that we use in the status quo. So in the, as side affirmative has shown you, first of all, that this is consistent and this has been uncontested by side negative. And second of all, that they completely do not understand what these games are like. So therefore, their entire negative case stands on this idea and this nature of a game that is actually not true, which is not what we're debating about at all. So vote affirmative. Hello, Azim.
Do you want a society with greater awareness?
With greater awareness?
Yeah.
So like with gamers going on games and learning about history? Yeah, of course. That's why we propose
So
mostly.
do you think books are a way of educating children?
Yeah.
Alright, so why don't you pay children to read books?
Because children don't like books.
So if a person does not like
I mean,
games,
we could pay children to like read books, but we don't think that is necessarily like mutually exclusive.
but why
to
not?
revolution,
Why not?
right?
Why not? Because why don't you
Well, we
do
could.
that in
We're not
status
saying that
quo?
we shouldn't, right?
All right. So this is a policy that could work either way.
That could. What do you mean?
This is a policy. You don't give children. You don't give children books because you don't understand that it does not distort the essence of education.
So we don't. Wait, can you?
Does paying people to read books distort the essence of education?
No.
And why not?
No.
Why not?
Because people are getting more awareness about what the countries are like.
All right.
And they're
Does the
reading
government
books.
have a right to stop citizens in Germany to promote a neo-Nazi ideology?
Sure, but we don't think.
All right, sure. So the state does have a right to contain certain ideologies.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Do sports promote cultures?
Yeah.
All right. So do you understand that FIFA has a large audience of gamers? The
Yeah, of
game?
course, yeah.
All right. So what exactly are you changing when people already know about other cultures through gaming?
So we're just like legitimizing this as a foreign policy
No,
tool.
no.
If you say that we already like
If there's
propagate our
already a large
culture through
audience of
sports,
gamers, what exactly are you changing?
if there's a large audience, you increase awareness in the international community. We already explained in our case, right, that like people don't know what's going on in Macedonia if there's a larger audience, and we were to bring the national identity of Macedonia to this large audience is obviously better.
How does playing FIFA have anything to do with promoting Macedonia?
We're not talking about FIFA, we're talking about like games like eRepublic.
And how exactly does eRepublic work in promoting Macedonia's ideology?
Because you're trying to build up your national identity, present it to the international community, and that's how you get alliances. That's
just
how you,
knowing that Macedonia as a country exists promotes its ideology.
that's why we're paying people, right? We're paying people to develop the national identity on these games.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk about two things in the majority of my speech, right? First, I'm going to talk about how this force of diplomatic excellence that the affirmative team is propagating is actually a nation of ignorant couch potatoes. And secondly, I'm going to talk about how paying to promote your national identity actually doesn't work, and how all they've provided us to prove that were two bad analogies. But before I do both of these two things, I want to offer exactly 3 points of rebuttal. Firstly, what they say to us is, well, these kids don't read the news anyway. They play games for 10 hours. There's no way to change their mentality. And what do they offer to solve that harm? Pay them to do it even more, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give them money to do what they already do, so they can stay as ignorant as they already are, so that they can somehow build a link to their national identity and promote it abroad. We say that's just idiotic. Secondly, they say, oh, but look, it will be so good, like, you know, Macedonia is important, and the national stage would suddenly increase because now they have all these gamers being paid to play that game. And we're saying, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry, but neither Macedonians nor Bulgaria's importance on the international stage is suddenly going to increase if more people in that nation start playing computer games. But onto the points I said I was going to address. Firstly, we're saying, ladies and gentlemen, it is important for people who are promoting your national identity to know what your national identity is. So which means that don't exist in the virtual world, be grounded in reality, listen to the news, read your history, understand what your national identity is before you go onto the world and try to project it, so that you don't end up doing what the Turkish TV shows are doing, which is showing that all the harem of the Sultan goes around half naked, which we know is not true, right? Yes.
Okay, but the reason that we're paying these people are to propagate the national identities of these nations. Don't you think that with that financial incentive, people are actually going to try to learn about their national identity?
No, that actually reads excellently into my second point. So I said my second argument is going to be about two bad analogies that the affirmative team gave. Bad analogy number one. They said, oh, this is just like games and sports and athletics. Last time I checked, athletes and sports athletes are not paid to come to my country and play a game. They do so voluntarily, so that that promotes the spirit of the game. That promotes the spirit of the game and national identity. Secondly, how is a Chinese gamer going to feel if they know that this US gamer who's promoting their identity through this game is actually being paid by their government? Is this going to A, increase their credibility, or B, decrease their credibility, and therefore increase the negative image that that country may or may not have in the eyes of that Chinese gamers? So for both these reasons, because it is much better, as we said, to be able to promote your national identity if you do so genuinely rather than being paid by your government, and also because it's much better to do so with actual knowledge of reality rather than actual knowledge of non-existent virtual reality, we beg to oppose.
Okay, so what you say is that Macedonia and Bulgaria are not such important players on the international stage anyway.
Breaks my heart, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, we agree. But isn't it the right of a country to try to promote itself?
If they can do so, yes, but I don't think your policy...
If they can do so, but they can try eventually. Because nobody knows it will actually be successful.
They can try and succeed, and they can try and fail. I'd rather them not try and fail if failure is easier to predict.
If the failure is other countries not not learning much about you, How is that a big harm?
We completely disagree that this is the only harm of your policy. What we're saying is you create disingenuous, ignorance propagators of your national identity, and we say
on the
no.
point that we actually paying for books is not of our policy. Does every country in the world have subsidies for books about national cultures and so on and so forth?
No idea.
You have no idea. Okay, you must have an idea on this one. Who pays the Bulgarian national squad to go and play on the European Championship, for example?
I have no idea.
Okay, I would say the government because they do not pay themselves. Now, you say you must read and learn to educate yourself for the identity, right?
Yes.
But let's imagine a situation where people actually do not want to read, do not want to learn to those mainstream medias we have.
Yes.
What do? You let them just be like that, or you try to involve them in some kind of education, even through a game?
You try to involve them in education that teaches them about their present and past history. You don't involve them in education.
But let's imagine that has failed. That chance has failed. It's gone.
No,
they don't want to read.
That is to us unimaginable. What you're saying is, let's imagine kids rather play games than go to school, so therefore let's shut down the schools.
Another question. Can we do both at the same time? Like, try to make them read books and try to let them play games?
Well, if they're playing games for 10 hours a day already, then probably not.
Is that finished?
I'll go inside over here. Oh, yeah.
Right, so the basic problem with the negative side is that they think that playing a game is a passive act where you're sitting on a couch, where you can't learn anything out of it, where there's no activity that could be meaningful. What they ignore, however, is that what we've consistently said from the beginning is that these people will be engaging in an online community where they'd have, through their actions and mainly their words given to an online community, win over their peers, win over the other users, and finally advance the national identity of the countries, which is what we're paying them for. When they say that you don't get any context, we'd like to disagree. You do get context through gaming. We see that first and foremost, games that they've talked about have a lot of realistic depictions of what actually happened through history. And we see that it's far more entertaining and challenging for someone to learn history by trying to act within its context. In games such as The Republic, I think you're out of order, but no. In games such as The Republic, what actually happens is that by engaging in this online community, you have a chance to actually push that national identity forward as something that people can trust and people are willing to work with and engage with. We also think that people can actually learn through games far better than they would if we expected them to actually watch the news, because they have to actually make that activity happen compared to anything else that they've talked about. What you have to do is sit around and listen, which is not necessarily the best way to learn things. However, it's a false dichotomy to say that this is a debate between people reading books and watching the news and people playing games. What this debate really is about is a dichotomy between people playing games without our involvement to try and push our national identity and our national agenda through it, and people playing games in a context where we actually do. We think that it is a given that the kids or young people today are far more interested in playing games than reading books. So we should definitely try to tap into that market by involving ourselves, by making sure that when people play these games, they can do so to advance our interests. Does anyone have a POI? No? Continuing. Second, in the beginning they said something like, we don't have the right to talk to people in other states because there's national sovereignty and so on and so forth, questioning the very essence of foreign policy, which is that you actually go and do that. Foreign policy is all about trying to convince other countries to go your way. We have directly talked to citizens in the past, like the example we brought on earlier with the Voice of America. We have directly done that because we thought that was the most effective way to get things to go our way. We have paid literature, sportsmen, sportswomen, anything to advance our national interest, right? How does that happen? Well, we're not saying that, no, thank you, that you make it sound as if like you're a nuclear power all of a sudden if you become important in these games, but you do advance your interests and you do make yourself known on the map, right? When we talk about the Macedonia example, like the win they had at the basketball championship last year made them known to far more people than however knew them before that, right? We think that within the context of the game, being present there, having players doing well, means that people get like an image of Macedonia that's far better than what they may have now, which is either that Macedonia is insignificant or that Macedonia doesn't exist at all. So, because we think that the opposition has mischaracterized this debate fully, we think that it's better to pay people to go out there and do our diplomatic work in a virtual environment. For the above reasons, we beg you to affirm. Thank you.
Right, so I'm going to talk about three things. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the nature of those games. Secondly, I'm going to talk why, if it's paid, it's going to bring negative harms. And thirdly, I'm going to talk about why it will not work. But firstly, about the nature of those games. Firstly, we're not talking only about eRepublic. We're talking about all those kind of games that are out there that are similar, that bring you some sort of medieval or Renaissance or whatever context and you play in it, right? And they paint it as being all positive, being as something like Farmville. We don't see it that way. We think those games are actually promoting all these negative things. They're promoting invasion, they're promoting colonization, imperialism, and stuff like that. But more importantly, they conceded to the point that those games do not bring any historical context. How are we gonna learn about different cultures or other countries or other cultures if you're playing as a Ooga Booga nation, right? As a nation that never existed or will never exist. So we don't see how it actually, no thank you, how it actually result in you talking about your culture or whatever that has nothing to do with the nature of the game or anything else. Secondly, we think no thank you. We don't see why have to pay that, because even if you know, there is some historical context in those games, and we know people do have some discussions, and they do stumble upon on a Lithuanian or a Macedonian or whatsoever that talk about those cultures. We don't see why have to pay people to do that, because we think already they are doing that. But if people are paid, we see two big negatives. Firstly, we see if a person, and you're making an ally out of someone, right, and he knows you're paid to make that person as an ally, no thank you, or to promote your national identity, we think that they're gonna be insulted. They're gonna feel that you're not being honest because you're only communicating with them, and by the way, pushing your national identity or talking about your country only because you're paid. Secondly, if you know thank you, if the nature of the game, you have to make enemies, right? And you make enemies with some sort of a Chinese person or a US person, and they know you're getting paid to be enemies with them, no thank you, we think they're gonna be insulted. They're gonna think that the nation which pays for you, and that nation is very, very evil, right? So they're not gonna really like you or your government. Go.
So every time the European Union or any government pays for its youth to go and attend exchanges or youth events in other countries, you're telling us they're not getting taken seriously because they may or may not...
No. The reason is, they might get taken seriously. The reason is, if there's some argument or an insult or a discussion which goes wrong, those people might not really like, you know, the representative of that country, right? And we don't really want that happening. So why it won't work? Firstly, we said that many countries are too small. They don't have such large gamers communities, and it's going to be very hard to stumble upon a gamer from Macedonia or Lithuania. And we think those countries are too relevant to even care about, right? Secondly, we think that those gamers will feel no accountability to prefer their national identity. At least they never presented anything in their models. And thirdly, we think the whole nation is gonna be full of coach videos as career gamers. So thanks, and please vote.